Hey guys, I want to talk about a beautiful simple pattern that I have played around with all day, and I think I have figured out the key things you want to do when making this pattern. So you start out with a C shape, or you start out with an S shape in the center with a little bit thicker of a line, and then you're going to crawl your way all the way around it in a starburst pattern to give it kind of a tunneled focus, so it looks like a burst of like an amoeba, an anemone from the ocean. So this ends up looking really natural, but the key is you want to have curved lines. If your lines are really straight, then it ends up a little cold. It's not as powerful. You want to have them curved, and if you have them tuck curved into the corners, then it looks like it's being contained by the object. And same thing as if you tuck it as a curve around this, so it looks like it's going around an edge, that can look really impactful too. But you want to be close together and then spread out on the edges. So you're creating kind of like a burst of light. Okay, now when we are shading this, we tend to shade right in that center point to crawl it out to kind of bring in the 3D effect. So I can shade it on either side, but probably not both sides of this center point. And then I can take some of these waves and add a little bit of shading to try and make it more believable that there's some effects going on here. So that's the basic gist of the pattern. But when I went to turn it into multiples on one page, I ran into a few problems. So this is kind of like a button, like a tuck on a couch cushion. Like you have a button that's pressing into the center and it's all sliding into that one spot. But when I was going to a bigger pattern and I added multiple lines, I didn't know how to make them collide into each other. And I tried folding them into each other, and I tried just making one collapse on top of the other. And both of those seemed a little overwhelming as a piece. And what I discovered is this pattern does much better when it's contained. So if I'm going to draw multiple pieces, then I actually need to have bigger shapes that define the edges of my cells, the edges of my shapes, and then find my center point that I want to build. So these are my shapes. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shapes that I'm going to build. And then I'm going to draw my center points that I want to crawl from. It doesn't actually have to be in the center. It's just my point that I'm going to work from. Now it can be a line, it can be a squiggle, it can be just a little dot. So these are my center points. This is my goal, and I'm going to have them end on those spots, and then I'm going to add shading in between the curves. Oh, and I've got one over here. There we go. So that's my goal, and then I'll speed this up and you can see how it all comes together. So I'm going to use the same fanning out pattern all through the entire piece. I'm starting with this one center point and I'm fanning it out to the edges that I had already mapped out. You can see that I'm now going to the bottom edge and it's going complete different directions from the bottom to the top, and that's part of what gives it that 3D effect. Then we'll tuck in those corners. And now I'm going to do the next piece and see how I'm curving the edges when it meets up to the first spot. That's what I noticed was a big difference in success with this pattern. Was one, you don't want your lines to be too straight. You always want to have curves. And two, if you can curve it coming out of the center point and curve it when it meets the edge, that seems to help a lot. Now I'm working on my third one, and this is kind of a tight, unconventional space. I'm going to do the best I can and make it a little heavy where it meets up with the next shape. And I'm just going to fill in this little random corner in the bottom. Now this is my biggest shape. This is the most dominant on the page. I'm going to keep those lines curved and try and curve on the outer edge, as you can see. Now my map is just a goal, it's not my ending point, so you can see I crossed over my pencil lines a little bit, just however it felt comfortable to me. And now I'm working in the top right, and I'm making it a little heavy where it meets up with the other shapes, keeping those lines curved. Gonna work my way around. It's kind of like drawing a flower with the flower petals, how it gets wider as it gets further out. Then my last shape, my one that seems to go tall and skinny. We're going to tuck this in over here. And just about done. That's pretty much it. Now we're going to add some shading to help divide this out a little bit. And you can see everything's kind of smushed together. Your eye is trying to make sense of it all. The shading will help. And then I think after I'm done with all of my shading, I'm actually going to come back in with a color and see what it looks like if I use one color on the entire piece. So let's go ahead and add the shading first. That usually helps to have that underneath the marker. I'm shading in between the edges and then towards the center point. And now I'm going to add some more intense black areas on the edges. Just try to add a little bit more contrast in the paper, because everything on the entire page is pretty even in this light, airy, thin line, wiggly line pattern. So I'm adding some darker triangles in the center points and in the flare out edges. And some of these points I'm going to have to take a thinner pin to tie them in, so it's not just a round tipped edge on the line. Oh, I like how that one worked. I'm pulling out the center space, so it's no longer just a really clean line, but an unexpected kind of spider leggy center. And then I'm going to tuck in some of these triangles on the edges. Gives a little bit more dynamic to these panels that are wrapping around the center point. And I think I'm starting to get to a point where I may have overdone it just a little bit, but we're going to keep going. I'm not going to quit. Let's see. Sometimes you just want to do a light touch, and if then you hit a point where it's too much, sometimes you have to go even further to find that happy zone again. All right, here we go. Add a couple more dark spots. Maybe one up here. I think we're getting close to where I feel ready to stop on this because I don't want to go too far. But then I'm going to add a bright red marker, and I'm actually going to put it equally distributed through the entire piece because I want this to all look like one piece of fabric that's just wiggling all over the page. Right now I feel like it looks like 4 or 5 flowers or blood cells all smushed together. I want it to look more carnival, more fabric. So let's see what it ends up look like if the color pulls it all together. Oh, this is definitely giving it more attention, more of an optical illusion that my eyes are dancing around the page, but we're going to add a little bit of shading. So first I'm trying a brighter red and that didn't work very well. So now I'm trying my lightest blue that I have to add some darker spots where the edges meet between the sections, and that's really helping it pop. And now I'm going to go back in with a little heavier hand with some shading of the pencil, and that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. This was fun. Tell me what you think. Would you use this pattern in your drawings? I think it's a great, simple filler to spaces, but you got to be careful that it doesn't just look like one flower in the corner. I think it's better having more than one grouped together. Thanks for watching.